Channel 10, South Florida's most complete news service. This is News Watch.
Good evening. With Anna Asqui, I'm Art Carlson. Tonight, South Florida remains poised on the edge of receiving its first hurricane in 16 years. Hurricane David has already passed through the Bahamas, leaving flooded streets, toppled trees, and knocking out power. Communications with the out islands has been cut off completely. Hurricane David is headed towards South Florida and is about 175 miles offshore. This Sky 10 tape shows our area is already wet from rain squalls preceding the storm. Winds are picking up and trees are being buffeted about by a steady blow and an occasional strong gust of wind. Most streets are fairly deserted for this time of day. Most people are inside, either testing the work they've done to protect their homes or working at boarding up. Some residents of low-lying areas have already evacuated their homes and are headed for or already in various shelters available to those who cannot stay safely at home. These first tapes from Santo Domingo show the aftermath of Hurricane David, where at least 600 people were killed, many of them as they huddled together in a church trying to get away from the storm. The church was flooded. Many were unable to escape. Trees were toppled in the Dominican Republic. Homes were washed away. Power was knocked out. Military troops are working to clear up the area, helping those who are homeless or separated from their families. The Dominican Republic was hit by the full force of Hurricane David, and the devastating damage left in its wake is evident in those first reports from the island. Newswatch meteorologist Don No has been tracking Hurricane David all day as he moves closer to South Florida. Don's at the map now to tell us the latest. Don?
Thank you, Art. The latest coordinates on Hurricane David as of 6 o'clock tonight. The latest advisory, the numbers are north latitude 24.3, west longitude 78.0. And that puts the center of Hurricane David about 175 miles to the southeast of Miami. Now, the tracking movement of Hurricane David continues to be a northwest movement at 10 to 12 miles per hour. And at that rate, they are projecting now that the center of the hurricane could possibly pass over land if it were remaining on that track. If it does not deviate, which is a big if, the center of the hurricane could pass over someplace over southeast Florida about daybreak tomorrow. And that would be preceded by several hours by gale force winds and by squalls and, of course, a very, very heavy rain. Now, Andros Island just reported about an hour ago 80 to 90 mile-an-hour winds, and they think now that the hurricane is going to strengthen somewhat in the next several hours and over the night. So right now, the highest force winds are still 90 miles an hour for Hurricane David. It's moving northwest at about 10 to 12 miles per hour. And later on in News Watch, in the regular weather segment, I'll have an update not only on David, but also on the other hurricane, Hurricane Frederick, which is still threatening the Leeward Islands and the Lesser Antilles. Right now, let's have more on Hurricane David, and here's Anna.
As we've mentioned, the storm's about 165 miles away from us right now. And Don, what's the word? The radar showing anything picking up around here? We've had a lot of storms and rain today so far.
Well, we had one little squall go through about 1, 2 o'clock this afternoon.
I know, it was in the middle of it.
A lot of us probably wondered if that was the start of the hurricane, but no, it was not. It was the squalls that frequently precede hurricanes. And I think we're going to take a look at the radar right now, and we'll see what it looks like. And I believe the radar is on the 250-mile range, and all of that stuff that you can see off to the east of us is the leading edge of the hurricane. Now, the reason it is not completely symmetrical, that you don't see the whole circle, is because much of the rain is being what they call attenuated, and the radar echoes bounce off most of the heavy rain, very dense precipitation, and cannot penetrate it. So we're probably looking very close to the center, but probably not through the center of the hurricane. Now, if you notice the red spots off to the top, I'll wait till the sweep comes around and I'll tell you exactly what I mean. The red areas, those of you with color TV, that sweep on that spiral band right there through there. Okay, now that is the first, probably one of the stronger squalls that is expected to come through here later on this evening. It looks like it's still about 75, 100 miles offshore from the looks of that. And that probably contains winds of, at least the gale force winds, which is 35 miles per hour or above. So that's the live radar picture of the hurricane, and I'm sure we're going to be checking in with that throughout the night. You can see that it is definitely on the way, and it's probably going to arrive here sometime after midnight tonight. They're right now forecasting that the eye of the hurricane will pass someplace close to South Florida around dawn tomorrow.
South Florida's lucky streak finally ran out.
I think so.
All right. Thank you, Don. Anna?
Channel 10, WPLG, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. From Channel 10, this is Eyewitness News at 6 with John Scott, Diane Magnum, meteorologist Bryan Norcross, Frank Ford, and the Channel 10 Eyewitness News team.
Good evening. I'm Diane Magnum. John Scott is off tonight and Art Carlson is joining us. She is now a major hurricane. Elena is packing sustained winds of 125 miles an hour.
She has changed course and is now heading on a west-northwesterly direction. Hurricane warnings have been dropped for Tampa but added for areas west of Panama City. Meteorologist Bryan Norcross is standing by at the map right now with absolutely the latest. Bryan?
All right, here's the latest satellite picture. There's the center of the storm, the eye showing up very well. Apalachicola located right here, and you see the center of the storm is just south of Apalachicola. The strongest winds are around that eye. Now, I want to go back, take you back to this morning at 3 a.m., and you can see how fast the storm has moved during the day today. There's the little eye. Now, watch it as we go through the day, every hour. Now, there comes the eye as it really develops and the winds build, and now it's really taking off to the northwest up to about 10 to 15 miles an hour, and the projected course is going to take it into the Pensacola area with 125-mile-an-hour winds. The hurricane warnings in effect from Gulfport, Mississippi, on around to Yankeetown, Florida. That's about 70 miles up the coast from Tampa, and gale warnings still extend on down the coast of Fort Myers, but we'll have lots more and the 6 o'clock coordinates for you coming up in just a few minutes.
1 p.m.
All we seem to be able to say is how lucky we are here in South Florida. You look at those pictures.
Boy, I tell you, and you can see the thing has turned into a real circle, you know, and it's really intensifying, and the winds are up to 125, gusting to 150 now, and it's really a big problem in Apalachicola. Take a look at what's going on in South Florida. All we have are Miami conditions because everything's so going on so crazy down at the Hurricane Center. 88 barometer falling, humidity 62%, wind out of the south at 16, and the surf temperature 85. I want to take you back to where this thing started, this tropical storm, Elena, down over Cuba. Now, as we go through the day late last week, moved up in the Gulf, turned into a hurricane south of Pensacola, and they evacuated the Gulf Coast, if you remember. Then took a hard right, headed toward the Florida coast, and stalled there yesterday, and then turned back around. And here we are right now, located just south or southwest of Apalachicola. Back to 5 o'clock yesterday morning on the satellite sequence. This is a long one. Here you see the storm move over to the coast, and now it's developing, becoming more circular, and then moving back out to the northwest or west-northwest. So there's the eye, very obvious. As it developed through the day today. The other thing to look at is look at the high pressure pushing in here. It's actually building down the Florida coast, and that's what prevented the storm from going any further east than it did. As far as the coordinates and so forth, if you're plotting it with us, winds 125 miles an hour with gusts to 150, moving west-northwest 10 to 15. Latitude is 29.3 north, longitude 85.5 west. Locates that 45 miles to the southwest of Apalachicola. Now, it is moving right in the direction of Pensacola and is forecast to go ashore in the Pensacola-Mobile area. Let's check where the hurricane warnings are in effect now. They go from Gulfport, Mississippi, on over to Yankeetown, Florida, Yankeetown being about 70 miles up the coast from the Tampa-St. Petersburg area, and gale warnings in effect around the mouth of the Mississippi River, and then from Yankeetown on down to Fort Myers. The gale warnings are still up over there now, and if you're planning any boating, they still have high winds and very high seas all over the Gulf. As a matter of fact, we have high seas off our shore as well. Now, there are other things to look at with this storm. First of all, look at the winds in the red area. This is where the hurricane-force winds are. They've had winds up to 95 miles an hour there at Apalachicola. Gales well up into Alabama, Georgia, still in the Tampa Bay area, over into Gainesville, up into Lake City, and pushing in down to the Pensacola area. The winds should die down as the storm moves on out, but this is a big and growing storm, so even though it is moving away, the winds aren't dying down quite as fast. There's been, of course, severe weather reported with the storm as well, and a tornado watch continues in effect for most of the northern part of the peninsula, and we have some heavy thunderstorms just to the north of us with the storm. Here are just a few of the reports. At Jacksonville, you saw the tornado report there, and 10.16 inches of rain officially recorded at Jacksonville for the storm so far over 3 days, and they'll probably get close to 15 inches. McClenny, that's to the west of Jacksonville, I-10 is closed there, so if you're thinking about driving north, the Highway Patrol does not want you to do that because some of the interstates are closed. Apalachicola gusts to 95 miles an hour, and the report from the National Weather Service office there is they're okay, but the buildings are in bad shape around them, and they've seen buildings coming apart downtown. That's what they said, coming apart downtown. So as the storm moves on away now, the rains are going to continue because the storm is growing, and we have these feeder bands of rain. That's Jacksonville happened to be over one most of the day. Look at our radar here, and you can see one of those feeder bands. Here it comes right here from Vero Beach on down to the western parts of Broward County, but it's moving mostly to the northeast. I don't think most of metropolitan Miami or Fort Lauderdale will see it. Let's go on now to our forecast for South Florida. Planning any boating, the high winds and seas are going to continue all around Florida for the rest of today, and small craft should remain in port. Winds out of the south 20 to 25, seas 5 to 8 feet. Inland bays will be choppy. So once again, planning boating tomorrow. It's going to be a little choppy out there, but not too bad. The forecast now doesn't look too bad for South Florida. A few storms around, mostly north of us. Muggy tonight, low about 80. Tomorrow, a mixture of clouds and sun, hazy and humid, just a few storms. Looks pretty good, really, 90. And the extended forecast looks very good if the storm continues the way it's going. That's your look at the weather. We'll check it again later on. Now, here's Art.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. We have time now for a final look at how the folks are faring along the coast in the wake of Elena.
And for that, let's go live now to Eyewitness News reporter Susan Candiotti, who comes to us via NewsSat 10. Susan?
Thank you, Diane. Even though hurricane warnings were lifted from here about 2 hours ago, gale warnings are still up. As a matter of fact, just a couple minutes ago, it was raining very, very hard here. But of course, the conditions now look nothing like they did about 24 hours ago when I joined you from the same general area. Just about an hour ago, city officials met in an emergency meeting and lifted the evacuation order. That means area residents can start returning to their homes. If their homes look all right, if the damage isn't too bad, they will be allowed to go home and remain there. Emergency shelters will remain open on an as-needed basis. Now, taking a look at some of the damage here just to prove to you what emergency preparation means. If you can prepare for it, that's fine. If you can't, take a look at what happened to this boat. And here's some folks who own this boat here. Can you briefly come over here and tell me how bad things look?
Well, it looks terrible. I think it's a total loss. There's nothing left. The hull is all broke. The sides are broke. Everything is just destroyed on the boat. And it was hanging out there on those davits. How it wound up here, I don't know.
See that? It blew apparently over here all this way. Many similar stories being told in this city. However, finally, with the evacuation order being lifted, life will soon be going back to normal, we all hope. Back to you.
Susan, I'm assuming this is the first real storm you've been into, a hurricane like this. Were you at all prepared for the ferocity of it?
Apparently, I've lost hearing.
Well,
looks like we've lost
such are the vagaries of live television. All right, that's Susan Candiotti reporting live.
From your 24-hour news source, this is the Channel 4 News Nightcast. Number 1 at 11 with Tom Randalls, Kelly Craig, meteorologist Bryan Norcross, weather, Tony Segreto, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
The season's first tropical storm moves closer to the southeast U.S., but will it hit and where? Nobody knows. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Tracking Tropical Storm Andrew, the latest advisory is just in. Team coverage begins now with meteorologist Bryan Norcross.
Kelly, we have the latest information, and it's been a very interesting evening here with Andrew. Top winds now at 65 miles per hour. That's up just a little bit. Moving to the west-northwest, about 10 miles per hour. That's slightly faster, although not much. Here we've located it for you. You see the track making a little bit of a bend in a more westerly direction, putting it about 750 miles to the east of us here in southeast Florida. I say it's been interesting because look at the satellite sequence. So we go this afternoon. There was the eye right there. And remember, the brighter the colors there, the more intense thunderstorms. And clearly through the evening this evening, the number of intense thunderstorms has been decreasing on the satellite, and the system has been getting more ragged. But in spite of that, the pressure's been going down and the wind speed is up just a little bit. So it's sort of a conflict going on there. Also, I think you can see a little bit of a turn to the left there. Now, what does all that mean, and why do we have that conflict going on? We have Miles Lawrence with us from the National Hurricane Center. Miles, isn't that an unusual sort of situation? Are you seeing that on your satellite there, the sort of decrease in the amount of thunderstorm activity?
Yes, the satellite presentation is not very impressive tonight, and as you mentioned, in spite of that, the pressure has dropped 3 millibars during the past 6 hours, and on that basis, we've upped the wind 5 miles an hour.
Now, you have aircraft in there pretty much continuously, is that right?
Yes, about every 3 hours, we're sending a plane into the center of the storm.
All right, the system, you've increased its forward speed a little bit, but on the models here that we're looking at, and also I know what you have there, it's showing high pressure is tending to push on it. You expect that forward speed is going to eventually decrease?
Yes, the increase in forward speed during the past several hours has been very small, only 1 mile per hour, and we've got it up to 10 miles per hour. Now, all of our guidance suggests that it's going to slow down slower than the 10 miles an hour that it's moving now.
Now, this sort of disruption in the circulation of the storm we're seeing on the satellite, are you taking that as a temporary thing? And we've seen that several times with this storm. It's been kind of a coming and going kind of thing.
Yes, the storm has kind of like been sputtering for several days now. and perhaps this is temporary. We believe that in the big picture that the environmental conditions are not hostile for further development over the next couple of days.
All right, Miles, of course, we'll stay in close touch with you folks down there. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
All right, we'll have the coordinates for you coming up in just a few minutes, and we'll have also other views of the thing and give you an idea where we think it might be going over the weekend. Have that for you, Jerry.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Well, what should you do if Tropical Storm Andrew becomes a direct threat to South Florida? Team coverage continues with Channel 4's Brian Allen.
If you did not lay in supplies when hurricane season started June 1st, you may want to seriously think about stocking up this weekend. With Andrew lurking in the Atlantic, it is not too late to get you and your house ready. It is too late to have storm shutters installed. But if you get up and head out to a lumberyard tomorrow, you can still protect your windows. So far, the rush to get the plywood, to get the windows boarded up, hasn't been that rapid. One thing you got to remember, though, is if you come out looking for the plywood, you're going to have to give them some time. Each piece has got to be cut to fit your window. Then you've got to go home and drill the holes to get the window ready so you can cover it. A couple other things, though, you need to get is water. At least 2 quarts per person per day. Also food, candles, matches, and also a radio, just so you can keep tuned of what's going on. Also, plenty of batteries. But one of the biggest priorities, though, will be the plywood. And if Andrew starts to bear down, this place will be a zoo. You will also want to have duct tape, a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit, and canned or packaged food on hand. If you take prescription medication, make sure you have extras. The best advice is not to wait until the last minute. If Andrew becomes a threat, stores will be crowded and items will be snatched up right away.
I'm just gonna wing it. I don't know. I'm gonna do my best and hope I don't get in any trouble.
In Miami, Brian Allen, Channel 4 News.
And just a reminder, our weekend watch begins at sunrise tomorrow. Starting at 6 a.m., we'll have live updates, including the latest from the National Hurricane Center. That's tomorrow morning at 6 on the weekend edition of Today in South Florida.
24-hour news source. Channel 4 News continues.
Bryan Norcross here with an Andrew update. Not the easiest storm to follow, Brian.
Well, because it's acting a little bizarrely. You know, weak storms do this kind of thing because they're just on the fringe of hanging together. But it's still a potent enough system that we got to pay attention to it.
Right.
And I would give it an equal chance anywhere in Florida at this point.
Despite what you're seeing tonight.
Despite what we see tonight, where it seems like it's going north, it's still far enough away, and the systems are variable enough and unreliable enough and unpredictable enough that we still have to say an equal chance just about anywhere along the Florida coast. But so when is it going to be where, and is it going to hit anywhere? If we were to ask what are the possibilities, is it going to hit anybody? I would say most likely yes. Somebody is going to get a storm out of this. Is there about an equal chance that we're going to get it versus Jacksonville versus maybe even as far north as Charleston? Yes, I would say that's true too. Now, here's where we see the storm locating on one of those lines at those times. Starting with tomorrow afternoon, we expect a hurricane, Andrew, at that time, and we expect it to be right where you see that dashed line. Then by Sunday afternoon, approaching the Bahamas in the worst case if it was as far to the left as possible. And by Monday afternoon, very close to the northern Bahamas if it's the far left end of that line or the bottom end of that line. So if it were to go a little bit faster, of course, the Bahamas would be threatened by Monday, and we could be threatened, or the east coast of Florida by late Monday with just a little increase in forward speed. So over the weekend, everybody in the state of Florida needs to pay close attention to Andrew. Let's check outside now, and then I'll get the coordinates for you, and you can go ahead and plot it with us. 82 is our current temperature, and the humidity is 82%. Winds out of the southeast at only 2 miles an hour. Barometer is rising, and just a trace of rain in our rain gauge here with a little shower that came through this morning. And the Clearview radar is showing you lots of showers have developed offshore in just the last couple hours, and they're going to move in. We're going to have the same kind of situation with some pretty good showers around here first thing in the morning. Okay, here's the story on Andrew now. You want to plot it with us at 25.6 north, 66.5 west, top winds up just a little bit to 65 miles an hour, moving west-northwest at 10. We put it about 750 miles to the east of Miami, and there's the pressure, which has gone down fairly significantly in the last few hours, in spite of the fact that the satellite, which we'll show you in just a second, is looking much more ragged, and the weather systems are, as I was saying, are really hard to plot exactly. Now, I've put them on the wide view of the satellite picture here to give you an idea what's going on currently. Now, currently, I want to stress currently, because here we have a little high pressure system, just a little one tucked up just to the northwest of Andrew, and that's going to try and keep Andrew from going too far in that direction. Here we have an area of low pressure. You see all these clouds, and then another big high up to the north, nosing in and trying to nose down, right down there, around the back of Andrew, and that would tend to kind of push it, scoot it along. Well, into the future, what we think is going to happen is this low pressure is going to go away. These two highs are going to merge and end up being a big high pressure system over the top of Andrew. The question is, how strong is that high going to be? That's really the bottom line. Now, let's look at the satellite picture. Starting a little earlier this afternoon, there was the eye right there. Now, watch as we go through the day here today and then through the evening hours. And what you see is the amount of color in the picture is shrinking, indicating not as many strong thunderstorms, but still plenty of spiral action in the storm there, and the aircraft in the storm is measuring pretty strong winds, so that's why we think that things are going to continue to develop. Now, here we go on the other satellite picture, the wide view. Here's that high to the north I was telling you about, and you notice it's trying to nose down over here and kind of get behind Andrew and kind of create a shield over the top and keep it from going any further to the north or much further north. But of course, a little bit of an angle difference makes a lot of difference once you get out 700 miles, and that's why it's very, very hard to tell. That little bit of difference just doesn't make any significant amount of statistical difference in the long range. So we got to stay on top of this thing over the weekend and just see exactly what happens. For the boaters, east winds over the weekend at 10 to 15 knots, 2 to 4 feet in the open sea, moderate chop in the bay, 87 degrees in the surf. Tonight, a few showers moving in. A couple of them could be pretty heavy, about 78, 90 tomorrow and on Sunday, kind of off and on sunshine, and some storms again first thing in the morning near the coast, inland in the afternoon. We'll be here all weekend long, and we hope you will be too, and keep you up to date. Jerry and Kelly.
Okay, Brian, thanks.
That is the Channel 4 News Nightcast. The Tonight Show with Jay Leno is next.
And be sure to tune in for Today in South Florida tomorrow morning at 6. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's bring Bryan Norcross in. Dade County, everything's back to normal tomorrow. Broward County, same thing will happen as well. What can the people expect in the morning when they get up to go to work? They get to deal with some weather?
I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be that quick. I think it's going to take longer into the day for this bad weather to move over. I mean, I could be proven wrong. Things are always,
and how bad
always
will
changing.
It be?
It could be quite squally, and one of the debates that no doubt they were having at the National Hurricane Center was, well, do we just make people think that it's all over, and we end up getting squalls moving through with winds of 50 or 60 miles an hour in gusts? You know, that's a difficult debate that they have to be having. As we talked about much earlier today, often in weaker storms, some of the worst weather you get is in the bands outside the storm. And that may, for us, well, absolutely certainly turn out to be true. And even some places relatively close to the eye wall. If it's a part, you'll see on the radar in just a second, a part of the eye wall that doesn't have many storms with it, that may go completely by, and then the backside, where a particularly strong squall happens to get them, may cause more problems. So it's not a uniform, concentric, nice thing. Not nice, but you know, you can understand clearly and predict clearly in a weaker, more disorganized storm as it is in Hurricane Andrew type storm.
We're not out of the woods yet as far as potential flooding in the next couple of days either, right?
No, it just really depends on whether we get coming across us one of these bands in a, and it happens to be in the same place over and over again with a line of storms, just like any other kind of very heavy rain event. So anyway, let's take a look at the radar. I want to make you feel a little good about yourself here. We'll start with the Doppler radar here for South Florida and take a look here, first of all, at us, and then look to the north. Now, watch, first of all, you clearly see Hurricane Erin here, and I want you to notice this down here. This is not rain. Notice the dry slot pulling in here and then wrapping up around Hurricane Erin, and there is the eye right there as it moves ashore. Right, this is the eye wall in here. We're going to show you a close-up on that in just a second, moving ashore right around the Fort Pierce area and the north side of the eye wall right around Vero. But notice the dry air pulling in here, now covering Dade and Broward County. I have my hands on Dade and Broward, so we're thinking that here in the short term, it's not going to be any problem at all. More questionable is what's going to happen if we get affected by these feeder bands coming in, and as this storm pulls this way, when might that happen? Let's look at the satellite picture here, and you get a wider view of this whole thing and the amount of moisture coming in. Here you see the eye right there, that bright spot coming ashore, and look at the tremendous amount of moisture. Now, look at the state of Florida here, 350 miles or so, and then compare that to the width of this storm. So it's going to take a long time, even once the storm goes up this way. We run the risk of getting a lot of this moisture just drug over us for quite some time, and that's why there's still concern about the possibility of flooding. It's not going to happen in the morning, more likely later tomorrow and perhaps on into Thursday. Now let's take a look at that Doppler image, very close up out of the Melbourne Doppler radar. Here's Melbourne right here, Vero Beach, Fort Pierce. Now, if you recall at the beginning of the show, we get these every 6 minutes, by the way, this yellow here was up here, and I said the concern is going to be when that rotates around. Now that's just coming into the barrier island there, just offshore of Fort Pierce and Vero Beach. And then this here is more associated with the eye down in here, is the real strong stuff. So that's going to rotate in, the eye is going to move this way, and then that's going to rotate in. So in this area right in here is where the strongest winds are going to be. Now it looks to me like the strongest storm surge is going to be right about Vero Beach, perhaps just north of Vero Beach, with that storm surge up to 5 to 8 feet. They have lowered, by the way, their estimate for Central Florida on the amount of rain down to 3 to 6 inches, because if you notice, associated with this part of the storm, only limited thunderstorm activity. So not quite as stormy a situation in terms of heavy rain as they had thought originally. We do, however, continue to have a tornado watch in effect, and if you see this feeder band right here, and this is part of the concern, I said the feeder bands tend to be the problem. They have reported now tornadoes reported on radar just offshore of Daytona Beach, moving rapidly near Ormond Beach to the southwest, near the Daytona International Speedway. So, more problems for folks in Central Florida, because the tornado watch is Palm Beach County north, does not include Dade and Broward, but as I said earlier, Central Florida and North Florida much more susceptible to tornadoes than we are here in South Florida. Let's take a look at that warning map one more time, because I know we have a lot of folks that have friends and relatives in Central Florida. The idea is, with the hurricane warning on this coast and the tropical storm warning on this coast, that in between will go from an 85-mile-an-hour storm to less than a 75-mile-an-hour storm as it exits. But it looks like it will come very close to Orlando and then go out somewhere up here north of Tampa. So Orlando being quite vulnerable to storms because they haven't had any storms there in a long, long time. Looks like they're going to be right near the storm. Here's Orlando right in here as it comes across something like this right near the storm tomorrow morning. So tomorrow morning could be a very bad morning in Orlando, and then by Thursday, or by tomorrow evening, up here approaching the Gulf Coast. But notice, if you remember, all those clouds still pulling up from the south. We're still going to be under it, I think, tomorrow evening and probably into Thursday morning. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our forecast now. For the boaters, small craft continue to stay in port. The winds, especially offshore, are going to be very high, starting out in the first part of the day, 40 down to 25 knots by late in the day. Seas 15 feet down to 10 feet. Extremely rough in the bay, at least to start the day. 84 degrees in the surf, and that's today's temperature. Tonight, some passing squalls to the north. When I say north, I mean Palm Beach County here, because I know we have some viewers in Palm Beach County. I think tonight Dade and Broward are going to be just fine, about 79 for a low. Periods of rain tomorrow could be heavy, especially as we move into the late part of the day, high up to 88. And I think that will continue on into Thursday. And just because I didn't even put 4 more days on there, because I just really don't know how long this is going to take. Wouldn't surprise me if some of it, some lingering effects, continued into Friday as well, because it could veer to the left of the panhandle and then get swept up to the east and kind of all that stuff pulled back over us. So that wouldn't at all surprise me. So flooding for us is a potential, something we need to be aware of. It's just a matter, well, we can't forecast precisely at this point.
Okay.
Okay, Brian, thank you.
We'll keep posted on
Morning. This is News 4 at noon, with continuing coverage of Hurricane Lili.
South Florida is spared the wrath of Hurricane Lili, but Cuba not as lucky. Today, the island is being bullied by the storm, causing severe flooding and damage. Good afternoon. South Florida can relax. Hurricane Lili is no longer a direct threat to us, but it is a different story for Cuba and its next target, the Bahamas. News 4 Chief Meteorologist Bryan Norcross kicks off our team coverage with the very latest information on Lili.
Elena, Lili has made yet another turn here this noontime, and I'm not exactly sure what that means for the Bahamas, but it means Cuba is going to continue to get battered. Let's take a look at the radar. We're looking out of Key West. This is the eye of Lili. Now, we had anticipated that Lili would move northeast across the island, emerging somewhere to the east of Havana. But that has not happened. Watch as we look through the last 3 hours. Notice that Lili is moving directly to the east and maybe even a little bit of a turn to the southeast, just a little bit on the last few pictures there. Now, all the models still indicate that the storm will emerge from the Cuban mainland there and on out into the Atlantic, but this turn to the east and the southeast may be good news for Nassau. It certainly is good news for us here in southeast Florida because it's keeping this very strong feeder band here offshore, and now, as you can see, we're almost going past us here in Dade-Broward County. That's going to alleviate the threat of that very, very heavy rain coming in here. Now, some other more minor feeder bands are developing and may very well bring us some pretty good showers and thunderstorms, and some of those thunderstorms could be heavy, but not this massive rain that we had thought yesterday would indeed come over us. As we look at the Keys here, we see there's a pretty good line of showers here affecting the lower middle Keys and some more just offshore, and then some other ones just now developing, but again, we think that the heavy, heavy stuff will stay offshore. Here in the satellite picture now, you can see the rotation center right in there. Now it's getting somewhat disrupted by the mountains of central Cuba in here, and the longer it stays over the mainland, the more weakening we expect to see, although we have not seen a lot of weakening yet. It's still a very well-developed storm. But again, with Nassau, New Providence right up here, the more of an eastward movement it takes, the better it is for them. And of course, the folks further south in the Bahamas certainly need to be concerned. So all interests in the central Bahamas need to be paying very close attention. Here are the numbers as of 11 o'clock, 22.4, 81.1, 90-mile-an-hour winds, moving to the east at 9, again, east right along the Cuban mainland there. There's the pressure, 975 millibars, 155 miles to the south-southeast of Key West. So the threat to the Keys also dramatically diminished. And still, though, with the tropical storm warning in the Keys, the possibility of some tropical storm winds and some squalls, but likely that will be dropped here later on today. Hurricane warnings in effect for all of the northern and central Bahamas, also for much of Cuba, but it looks like to me the northern Bahamas may be in better shape here. So with this turn to the east, this early turn to the east, the central Bahamas certainly some concern. Now what's happening is this very strong cold front that's driving south, and the associated upper level winds are pushing Lili to the east, and once this gets a little further south, it's going to pick up Lili and zoom it across the Bahamas. So it's going to really move fast. You folks in the Bahamas, bear that in mind right now, just coming on in. And this cold front will also bring us some storms. Joe Haynes will have more on that in a little bit. So here's where we see it. Early tomorrow, leaving the Bahamas. So you folks in the Bahamas, be ready for it. It's going to come your way in a big hurry. All right, Joe Haynes back with more in just a little bit.
Thanks, Brian. We want to remind you.
All right, we have to go back to Bryan Norcross right away now for another tornado warning. Brian?
All right, Canberra and Ann, we're just coming in here, and I'm just, let me go ahead and punch it up while I work with it. We're talking about in the Bal Harbor area here of eastern Dade County, obviously. Here, I'm just trying to get the radar oriented. Here's Sunny Isles here in North Miami Beach, and this would be the causeway over to Bal Harbor right in there. So trying to figure out the cell exactly, but the idea is here, Sunny Isles, yeah, Sunny Isles area, Bal Harbor area, North Miami Beach area. This is the cell that we're talking about. They say it was developing near Bal Harbor, so it may very well be. Tell you what, I'm going to look at a little different view of the radar. But you folks in that part of Dade County now need to stay away from the windows and in a protected area. We're actually having a terrific rainstorm out here right now. And let me see here while you're kind of working with me as we try and get to the most recent picture. Well, okay, that's the problem. There's the National Weather Service radar, but it's working behind. Our real-time radar is showing all these very bright reds here. I can't tell you because it's so close to the radar site which cell it is, but let's suffice it to say that the areas of Bal Harbor, North Miami Beach, Carroll City, and Opelika under this very intense cell, part of this line coming in. Now, see, it's very close to our radar site, and that's why very, very difficult to see. But you can see this very intense area of reds and purples there moving off the beach and across North Dade right now. So if you're in that area, stay away from the windows, get to an interior room, just like we tell you in a hurricane, get an interior room and let this thing go by. It's going to go by very, very quickly, moving at 40 miles an hour. That means it's probably going to take 3 or 4 minutes for the whole thing to go by. So it will be on top of you in a heartbeat, and then it will be gone if you happen to be in the cell. I cannot tell you exactly which cell, because this is so intense up in here, it's kind of masking any individual cell that we were able to see when this was down in South Dade. The last one went through in South Dade. But let's go. Give me a radar picture over there, if you would, Dave Rexroth. Let me show you the extent of this line. Cliff in Sunny Isles, is someone on the phone? Is that Cliff in Sunny Isles, you on the phone? What do you have there now?
It is absolutely probably blowing about 40, maybe 50 mile an hour. Intense rain. We've got some lightning. It's ugly out here right now.
Yeah, that's that squall line coming through, and you need to, but I don't want you to be looking out that window, although I think it's probably past you now.
Yeah, it's already, it just went by us probably about a minute before you got on. I got on the air with you.
Okay, so it's tapering off now?
Yes, it is.
All right, let's go ahead and then take a look here. This is where we stand right now with this squall line moving in. There you see it right there. So you can see where this kink in the squall line is, and then it's coming right in about Sunny Isles, and then it runs all inland. So this is exactly the same line that produced that tornado across Cutler Ridge there. It also extends up here into Broward County. Now, you know, this obviously has a history here of being very strong. So let me go ahead with the real-time radar and get you up in Broward. But we can see that the Broward part of it is not as strong. If you notice there, up here in Broward, the line is not anywhere near as intense. And all of a sudden, in South Broward, it gets very intense here, extending down into Dade. So it looks like this problem cell is moving, according to Cliff there, and moved across the Sunny Isles area, and then went ahead, is moving on off to the west. So again, let me just go over these towns again. North Miami Beach, Carroll City, Opelika. You folks there, stay away from the windows in an interior area of your home. These tornadoes normally are not real strong tornadoes, but the problem is they come on you, in just a major hurry, and so you get this big gust of wind, as Cliff described. All of a sudden it comes up, and then it tapers off quickly. So that can break a branch off a tree and slam it into a window and break your window. So that's why we urge everybody to stay away from the glass inside. You'll notice when the wind comes up, and you'll notice when it goes back down, and then when it goes back down, you're going to be okay again. It's just these, this is what we expect. There are hardly even tornadoes, but think of them as very strong bursts of strong wind that can rip something off a tree and slam it against your house. So that's what we've got to be aware of. Obviously, this hurricane, and every hurricane has a different personality, this hurricane is going to produce these. Honestly, it's not the most common thing here in South Florida. This is very common almost everywhere else in the country with a hurricane, but not as common in South Florida. But obviously this hurricane is going to do this here to us here throughout the night. So all right, Cliff, you're still with us. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
We had a question for you. What do you think the possibility of the Gulf Stream knocking this thing a little bit toward us when it reaches the Gulf Stream?
I don't think that's a strong possibility. I'll tell you what here, Dave Rexroth, if you would cue up the satellite picture over there. Again, we're go back to the beginning of that whole sequence, and we'll show you what it's doing, I think. And I'm anxious to get to the National Hurricane Center, and I think we're about 10 minutes away here from being able to do that. Watch the eye. Are you able to see the television, Cliff? I don't know if Cliff is still with us, but watch the eye of this thing as it develops. Now, the question is, where exactly here, thanks, Dave, where exactly here is the eye? If this is the eye here, I think what it's done is it's moved a little bit closer to the coast. Now, because it's a fragmented situation, it's a little hard to tell exactly where the eye is, but I have a suspicion that it's there, and it may have taken a little jog to the left, where before it might have been moving like this. We may be seeing a little lean to the left. Now, if that's the case, that's going to take it much closer to Key West. Now, I hesitate to even go into that because it's not clear at all, and you always want to have more pictures. But here's another view, and if you see, it looks like the storm has suddenly started paralleling the coast, maybe making a little bit of a turn like that. I don't know if you folks at home can see that, but that's what it appears to me. And on the radar, I'll tell you what we need is let me go back to our real-time radar. What I need is the long-range radar out of Key West where we can see the eye. Let's go ahead. That's not the long-range. The long-range radar, the CREF out of Key West. And all right, hang on just 1 second. We'll be able to actually track this eye while Dave Rexroth gets that ready here. All right, here we go. All right, let's take a look now at this long-range radar where we can track the eye and see if what we're seeing on the satellite picture seems reasonable. There's where it is at 7 o'clock. Okay, watch the time up here. Now watch it move here, and it looks like it's paralleling the coast more in the last 3 hours as opposed to moving further away from the coast. And if that is indeed the case, and sometimes you are deceived because the hurricane is sort of redeveloping as we watch it here, sometimes you're a little deceived about this, but if that's the case, that's going to give us more concern for the folks in Key West and take a little bit of heat off of Dade and Broward. But I hasten to add, we've already seen these very strong, intense bands come through here, and we have many more of these to come before we're done. So I don't know that for Dade and Broward it's going to make a heck of a lot of difference, but it's going to make a tremendous amount of difference who in the Keys gets it, if indeed that continues to be the trend, this bending a little bit further left and aiming more toward Key West than toward Marathon, which is sort of what it seemed to be aiming toward just a little while ago. All right, we'll continue to watch it here, but one more look at real-time radar, because we have a very, very intense cell right here, but it's right next to the radar, as you can see there. And so things kind of look a little different right next to the radar than they do when they're out a little bit, but you can see how quickly it's moved. Look at that. The beach is almost clear now, and now this cell has moved up here just to the north of Miami Lakes, Carroll City area. That may very well be the cell that we're concerned about right in there. So looks like Carroll City. Look at the purples. Carroll City, here's Miami Lakes, north of the Palmetto, approaching extreme southwest Broward. That strong cell that had the tornado reported with the tornado warning being issued. Looks like just in about 2 or 3 minutes, it's moving so fast that it's going to be gone, and now we await the next band to move on through. All right, that's it. We'll come back in a little bit and give you another little wrap-up here.
All right, thank you very much.
Better than that weather, and that's when everybody needs to be inside. Here is a satellite picture. If you're just joining us here at this 9 o'clock hour, you see that the hurricane did make the turn that we have been looking for overnight, and now passing by Eleuthera out here. We just have a fear that we have virtually total destruction in some parts of Eleuthera. Those are hardy souls out there, and they have some good structures made for hurricanes, but it looks like really a horrendous situation, and Abaco there is next in line. Here's the long-range radar, and you see the bands rotating around. Again, these little light bands coming in. Here's another one, but here's this heavier weather now passing over Grand Bahama and again rotating toward us. Again, the eye is outside of radar range out in here as we saw on the satellite, but as the storm moves this way, that'll get the eye up here closer to us, and that'll bring the bands in. All right, well, we have an opportunity now. Why don't we go out to the National Hurricane Center, and Miles Lawrence is with us out there. Miles, any word at all from the Bahamas, from Eleuthera or Cat Island?
We have seen some ham radio reports of some damage in Eleuthera, and also we've had reports of 80-knot winds. That's over 90 miles an hour from the southern part of Great Abaco Island, and they're still not in the eye of the hurricane. So that's some indication of how serious this hurricane is.
And your forecast track really takes it directly over Abaco, essentially.
Directly over Abaco Island, yes.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Dade and Broward here and our timetable for deteriorating conditions. We can see clearly on our radar here and on the National Weather Service radar, clearly the edge of the stronger part of the storm still offshore a while. At what point are you still thinking late this morning when the weather will deteriorate in Dade and Broward?
Well, we're looking for some of the outer bands of the hurricane to swing across Florida. Now, that hasn't happened yet, and sometimes it doesn't happen, even though we anticipate it for strange reasons. But we do think that during the day today there will be occasional bands of the hurricane moving through with winds to tropical storm force and some fairly heavy rain. And that's expected to go on for about 12 hours, at which time the hurricane will reach its point of closest approach to us and then start moving away as it moves and threatens central and northern Florida. And so the next 12 hours are the critical ones for us, and we really think that we're in pretty good shape here.
You think that closest point is going to come late this afternoon?
Right, that closest point of approach should be late this afternoon, yes.
And then how close a call is this going to be, or is it just too close to call for Palm Beach County, or northern Palm Beach County, and up through the central part of the state? For instance, Cape Canaveral there sticks right out like a sore thumb. It looks like very close to your track.
Well, I think Central and North Florida have a real dangerous situation on their hands. Our forecast track has the center passing within just a few miles of the coast, and with the eye being the size that it is, perhaps 30 miles across, it's very possible the eye wall could actually move on the coast of Central and or Northern Florida.
Now, we know that the hurricane force winds, what is the radius in the hurricane force winds now? It's still just over 100 miles?
It's over 100 miles, but that's mainly on the east side and the northeast side of the hurricane. On the west and southwest side of the hurricane, which is the part closest to us, the hurricane force winds only extend out about 60 miles.
Okay. All right, but how far out does the real core of this hurricane extend? I mean, we know that the hurricane force winds are one thing, but what the business part of the hurricane is this 120 to 150. Do you have any sense of that out from, is that 30, is that half of that hurricane force distance, or do you have any feeling for that from the aircraft?
Well, the real business part of the hurricane is in the eye wall,
right.
And the diameter of the eye wall has been running about 30 miles, give or take a little bit, and it fluctuates also. So that's a diameter. The radius then is 15 miles. So between 15 and 25 miles from the center would be where you would expect the maximum destruction of the hurricane.
All right, so that's how close to call. It's like threading a needle on whether you get this just monstrous destruction or just a really good blow.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and I'm sure you folks are in close touch with the people at the Kennedy Space Center up there. In fact, I know you are. At what time are we thinking that they're really going to be facing this thing and this very close call?
Well, that's we're talking about 18 to 24 hours for the eye of the hurricane to approach Central Florida. So we're talking about during the day tomorrow for that area.
Okay. All right, Miles Lawrence, we'll stay in close touch with you, and our best thoughts for the folks in the Bahamas, but just does not look good.
Not good for them, no.
All right, Miles Lawrence, thank you very much from the National Hurricane Center. All right, if I can, let me go back, and for folks that tuned in at 9 o'clock, and you folks in the control room, tell me if we have someplace we need to go. But I wanted to go ahead and get you the coordinates, because I know some folks may just be tuning in this morning. 25.4 and 76.2. The 25.4 puts it a beam essentially of Homestead. We're calling it Miami, just indicating Dade County, but in any case, it's passing by us offshore. 150 mile an hour winds west-northwest at 14. Pressure coming up just a little bit, and indeed weakening slightly, but we don't take that as a weakening trend in any way. Now, here's what we see happening during the day today. Here's where we expect the center of the storm to be overnight tonight. Now watch as we go through the day today. You see the core of it right there, the hurricane force winds staying offshore of Dade and Broward, but we do find ourselves in the tropical storm force winds here. But the hurricane force winds in the overnight hours coming ashore in Palm Beach County and perhaps down even very close to the Boca area, but certainly central and northern Palm Beach County more threatened, and then the storm continuing on up the coast. And you can see on that track that brings it in like this, there's the Kennedy, there's Cape Canaveral right there where the Kennedy Space Center is sticking out. And if that eye wall goes over the Cape, as we learned last night, all of the structures on the Cape there will be exceeded by the winds. In other words, the building code that they used to build those things was not up to this kind of a hurricane. So we could see just a complete devastation there, and it's going to be that close a call as we talked about. Plus or minus 25 miles. One way or the other will mean everything from total destruction to just a lot of damage. So it's impossible to call at this point, but certainly they've got to be scared to death up in that part of the state.
Brian, just one quick question. I mean, obviously we don't want to give people a false sense of security, yet we don't want to panic them either. And obviously, even though the eye wall is not coming over us, like you said, we are going to be experiencing some pretty strong winds. And yet still we shouldn't take our precautions and put everything away, because I'm concerned, what about Gert?
No, Gert's out in the middle of the Atlantic now. We do not think that Gert's going to be a threat. We think that Gert will kind of follow Floyd, but Floyd will have already moved back to the east some, and Floyd will in some sense
pull Gert up, or the system that let Floyd go by will still be gone and Gert will move in behind it. That's, of course, no guarantee because we're talking about 6 or 7 days away for Gert, but we're thinking positive thoughts about Gert right now. As far as we're concerned here, my biggest concern is people are going to go outside and say, well, it looks okay to me outside, and it is okay outside here, but the worst of this, remember, is going to happen this afternoon, whatever the worst of it is, and it will be, I think, significantly different in Homestead than it is in Deerfield Beach. The weather will deteriorate, will be much worse the further north you go, just because being closer to the center of the storm, just in the distance of the main part of metropolitan southeast Florida here, and then significantly worse yet as you get up to northern Palm Beach County. So, you know, we just have to think about it that way, and we just have to watch it happen. But for now, again, we have another hour and a half to 2 hours here where it is safe to go outside, and real-time radar shows you where the bad weather is. There it is out there. But you can see, if you've been watching us, it's when we started here a couple hours ago, it was over there. So here it comes, and it's rotating around, and we'll get it even in this band here. When this comes in, we might get some pretty good squalls, but this out here is the main weather that we need to be concerned about when that comes in, because embedded in that are going to be very strong squalls that can snap tree limbs and stuff like that. So that's what we're concerned about here. We're not concerned about some big hurricane blow coming through here. We're concerned about somebody's driving along and suddenly one of these squalls comes in with 50, 60, 70 mile an hour winds, snaps off a tree limb and comes down across your car. That's why we don't want people out. That's why we just want to kind of let this thing go on by and then go back about our business, and we have every expectation that we'll be able to do that tomorrow. The trouble is whether this is all over early enough in the morning to get back to business first thing in the morning. That call is going to have to be made later on in the day.
Well, Bryan, right now, if there are people at home and maybe there are some last-minute things that they needed to pick up, is there a window of opportunity here for the next hour and a half where they can safely do that, or do you think they should stay home right now?
Well, I mean, yes, absolutely. If anybody needs to go out, the problem is there's not many places to go because most every place is closed. So, but what we don't want is people going out milling around and hanging around, because the emergency systems are kind of pulled back waiting for this to happen. And what would happen if you went out and you got involved in an accident or just something bad happened? So if you don't have to go out, there's no reason to go out. If you have to, if you have some kind of emergency or whatever, now there's nothing unsafe about being out right now. But I mean, our city is pretty much shut down to allow this thing to happen. So let's let it happen, and if you don't have something you absolutely have to do, let's just let it happen, and with any good luck we'll have a few problems, and we won't have any big problems, and we'll go on about our business, and we'll focus on points to the north. But again, especially in Broward, and more so in North Dade than South Dade even, you know, you have this more likely to have that kind of problem I talked about, of just all of a sudden something coming along and snapping a power line or a tree or something like that, and those kind of things are dangerous and life-threatening. So that's why we go through this mode, even though we're not expecting some kind of catastrophe.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully we won't have a catastrophe. Bryan Norcross will be checking back with Bryan on and off again. And you know, we're talking about things you shouldn't do, and one of the things you shouldn't do in a situation like this is go to the beach. But Evan Bacon is on the beach in Deerfield Beach, and apparently you've been seeing some people out there, right, Evan?
Oh yes, there are some interested people coming out to see what's going on. We're standing in a sustained 25-mile-an-hour wind, I would guess. It has been blowing since daybreak this morning at a pretty constant rate. If you look behind me, you can see the Deerfield Pier about a quarter mile in the distance, braving the waters. The seas have been pretty rough throughout the morning. I would guess the waves somewhere between 3, 4, maybe sometimes 5 feet, a little ways out. Great for surfing. A few people actually.
And as usual, starts off the top of the hour for us. Bryan.
All right, we have the new advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Wilma is strengthening and picking up forward speed. And here are the new numbers. The latitude is 23.9. The longitude is 84.4. And the top winds now 110 miles per hour. That's at the very top end of the Category 2 scale. So it would seem that there is a brief opportunity here for Wilma to become a Category 3 hurricane, moving to the northeast at 15 before this jet stream comes into play and then takes away that opportunity. 958 millibars is the pressure, so again, it's just trending down slightly, but that is expected to reverse as well and come back up
here in the next 12 hours or so. Category 2, 170 miles west-southwest of Key West is the center of the storm. Now, here you see the future track, and the future track has not changed. And if you're just tuning in, we've been on the same schedule for some time. The storm expected to be in the vicinity of the lower Keys in the overnight hours, and the tropical storm force winds arriving in the lower Keys around midnight, and then in the vicinity of the southwest coast sometime around sunrise or in the early morning hours, and then spreading on across the state and picking up speed so that it's on off the state on Monday afternoon. And Monday afternoon, we'll be on the backside of it here, but still we expect to have strong winds based on what's going on now with the winds down in Cuba, where in Havana, they just had hurricane force gusts well down on the bottom side of the storm. This is a very large windstorm, and so we're going to be dealing with it even if the center doesn't come right over top of us like Katrina did, for example. We expect winds comparable or higher to Katrina's winds even without a direct hit, so to speak. Now, as far as looking into the future, the storm is going to take off like a rocket ship up the East Coast, and it looks like the center will stay offshore. But again, this is going to be a very, very large windstorm, and it may very well be felt in a significant way in New England and even on Long Island and New York as it goes on by on Tuesday. So just bear that in mind if you're heading up that way. All right, now in terms of the winds and how we expect them to arrive, here they are now. And you see that the tropical storm force winds have already arrived in Key West on occasion. It's just the edge there of the tropical storm force area. And we had the tropical storm force gusts just a little while ago. And let me tell you what it is there right now. Now, the winds are at 37, gusting to 51 at Key West. So good, solid tropical storm force wind gusts. And at Miami, they're gusting to 31, so the winds are definitely coming up here now as the hurricane gets closer. So 51-mile-an-hour wind gusts at 8 o'clock at the Key West International Airport. Now, as the storm moves toward us in the early morning hours, there's how we expect it to arrive. Something like that, plus or minus a little bit, with the center of rotation being somewhere in here, coming across just south of Naples on the current track. Could be a little north, could be a little south. Hurricane force winds early in the morning over the Keys and then spreading over Dade and Broward County as we get later on in the day, later on in the morning hours and into the afternoon hours. So the worst weather in Miami, Dade, and Broward should be in the morning after sunrise through into the afternoon hours and then improving dramatically in the evening. We expect about 6 hours possible of hurricane force winds here, but the winds are going to be strong for longer than that. But the real winds that rattle the shutters and really make you want to stay out, stay inside, those are the, and you go, oh, what is going on outside? Those we expect to last for about 6 hours. And as far as how strong the storm is going to be, this is not updated on the 8 o'clock advisory. This will be updated at 11. Category 2 storm approaching, although as we've seen, it has an opportunity to be a Category 3 here. It's going to be very close, but we always say that plus or minus 1 category on the intensity forecast. So it may make the line of Category 3, but in any case, it's expected to weaken as it speeds on across Florida. So down to about a Category 2 at landfall, and then exiting over here as a Category 1. In Miami-Dade and Broward, expecting the storm to be on the order of a strong Category 1 or weak Category 2 as it goes on by. Now, if you're in the Keys and looking at this, you might say, oh boy, the track is not now over the Keys, but this is just the center. And even if the storm were to go there or up here. The wind is so big that it's still going to push the water into Florida Bay in a significant way and still have significant storm surge. You are right that the odds of the storm going directly, the center of the storm going directly over the Keys is not as high, but in actual fact, the higher storm surge will come if it goes just north of the Keys, higher storm surge in Florida Bay, because it's the right side of the storm that pushes that water forward because of the circulation going in a counterclockwise way around the storm. All right, here's the radar since noon, and watch the one band went through Key West. Those were the first tropical storm force winds. And now there's another strong band approaching Key West now. And notice things are happening pretty fast. And now we can actually see the eye of the storm here. And that looks like it's going to track something like this. But now we'll be able to track it minute by minute here as we go through the next, let me see, about trying to guess how long we're going to be at this now. Another, I would say, 20 hours or so, and it should be really improving by that time. We also have a pretty good batch here that is heading north, and this may affect Miami-Dade and Broward, but obviously this is where the main weather is here. And in these bands we're looking at right here, these individual cells, these are where we might see some tornadoes, so we'll have to watch for that very, very closely. We've been looking at that with real-time radar here, and we have seen some rotation in those cells, and the National Weather Service has put out notices of that possibility. On the satellite picture, here you see it spiraling and speeding up. Look at it going faster, slow, slow, fast, 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 faster, as it's moving in the direction of southeast Florida. There you see it there, and we now see these bright purples around much of the center, and as we've talked about, that's an indication of a stronger storm. The more solid the dark purples are in our color scheme here around the center, the stronger the hurricane. And when we had that Category 4, Category 5 version of this hurricane, it was just a solid dark purple there, but obviously fragmented now because we only have a strong Category 2 hurricane at the present time. So still the storm surge issue is still in effect. They've increased the storm surge forecast on the last advisory. Now, let me just check to be sure, because the storm surge forecast now is exactly the same. 9 to 7 feet just south of the storm, 5 to 8 feet in Florida Bay. Again, depending on landfall. If the landfall does drop down some, that will put more water in Florida Bay. But remember, waves on top of that, and then 2 to 4 feet on the base, the ocean side of the Keys, and then also 2 to 4 feet along the southeastern coast, Miami-Dade and Broward, arriving, the storm surge starting to arrive, sort of starting to be pushed in at about midnight with the southeast wind. But then when we go to a south wind and that water can get pushed up Biscayne Bay, that's when the most significant flooding is expected in Biscayne Bay, late in the overnight or to near sunrise. So it'll be an overnight to sunrise situation and may even last into the morning hours. Now, the other issue is the tornado issue. We've talked about this in terms of the history of hurricanes coming from this direction and involving cold fronts. Hurricane Isabel in 1964 was one of them that produced 6 tornadoes. And they were all significant tornadoes, or all reasonably strong tornadoes, stronger than our normal tornadoes. Our normal tornadoes are normally F0 tornadoes, about 60-mile-an-hour tornadoes. These were F2. 2 of them were F2. The other ones were F1s. And all of those are capable of damage. Obviously, a tornado that has 150-mile-an-hour winds is capable of significant damage. So it looks like that's beginning to develop, that kind of weather pattern. So we'll continue to have to watch that very, very closely. All right, let's leave it there. And
by for us. And Bryan, bring us up to speed. We know we had the latest advisory at the top of the hour. And right now, Irene, basically drenching the mid-Atlantic states, the Delmarva Peninsula.
Yeah, the center of the hurricane is offshore of the Delmarva Peninsula. In fact, we can kind of make it out on the radar. It's a ragged-looking thing, and I've got good news for where Luke is there. The hurricane is passing by offshore of Delmarva, and it's going to start pushing the water out of Chesapeake Bay. So the tides are very complicated in there, but I think the odds are that they're going to be okay. Here's the center right here. Here's Ocean City, Maryland up there. So the center is going to come very close, but on the back side of this hurricane, the rains are letting up. It's only very gusty wind, and it is going to take time to clear. The real nasty weather is here on the north side of the hurricane. And look at this band here heading into Philly. This is going to provide flooding rains in North Jersey, over in the Philadelphia area, up to the main line toward Norristown, down in Baltimore and Washington. Rain flooding, not storm surge flooding, kind of being pushed up the river. But this rain, which now the back end of it is kind of in Virginia, and this big area of rain is just going to move north, and it's going to take all the overnight and into tomorrow before it clears out of New Jersey, well into tomorrow before it clears, and the ground is already saturated there in Jersey and in Pennsylvania and in New York, and they only needed about 2 inches to get over their flood, to get to flood level, and everything on top of that is all flood. So we are just thinking it's going to be a big, dangerous flood situation.
Bryan, just to reiterate, though, you think for the Chesapeake Bay, the surge issues aren't going to be as bad as maybe earlier forecast?
What? Well, we think this is going to still be very bad inland with the heavy rain and flooding, and at the coast we think this is going to still generate this surge of water in that New York, New Jersey area where the points come together there, and along Long Island and on the Jersey Shore. We still anticipate life-threatening conditions right at the coast. In the high rises on the upper levels, very, very strong winds in the city, and this I think the legacy of this is going to be persistent rain for hours, with wind toppling trees all the way from North Carolina all the way to Canada. I think in the end, with some damage along the coast, will be the legacy of Irene.
Bryan Norcross at the Weather Channel for us. Bryan.
Hurry. So here's where we are right now. Look at the heavy band of rain now moving up from Providence up to Windsor in Connecticut, and here north of Bridgeport, moving up into the Fairfield County area, and then New York City. It's kind of tapered off at the moment there, but that's just because you're in between rain bands there right now. Down to the south, here's that next band, and every band that comes by will be gustier. So here's a band here that is gustier than the one that came through Jersey before. Here's another one in South Jersey from about the south end of Ocean County with the Atlantic County line there, and then rotating down into Delaware. And look at this, in Delaware, it's still raining hard down in Dover, and it's even raining and very windy on the south side. Winds way down in North Carolina, and the center is right in here, by the way. That's the center right there. Way down in North Carolina, still gusting to 68 miles an hour as of an hour ago. So the winds will continue even after the hurricane goes by. We could switch over to Max 3. There you see the wider view. So that's the line right there. Now that line is going to rotate. You can see it. It's kind of rotating toward the city now, and it's going to lift on up north. So we have, of course, all flood warnings all through this area. So that's another serious line, and every line that comes is going to be more serious. The one that caused all the heavy rain in New Jersey is now moving on up to the north of New York City. Now let's go farther south, because we have this very interesting thing going on in South Jersey. This is Cape May County. This is Atlantic County, obviously Atlantic City right here. There is the center of the hurricane. What's happening here is the wind is coming in, and it's hitting the shoreline, and it's being kind of diverted to the right, and then other wind is piling up on it. So it's called speed convergence, causing those very heavy storms there on the coast, right inland of the Jersey Shore and down into Cape May County, and very heavy rain here in the southern part of Jersey. And I wanted to show you the back end of the storm just to show you there is some end to this. There it is there. There's the end of the rain, and that's really most of the wind is gone now. Most of the wind is in Virginia. It's really let up a lot in North Carolina, but it's going to take that long. It's going to take a long time tomorrow to get this wind out of here, but the rain is light once the center of the storm goes through. There you see it on the satellite. You see all the dry air down here in that area right there. That's all dry air. So there's the center up there. Okay, it's moved up now. It's just off of Cape May, and it is moving to the north, and it's going to be in the New York City area. How many hours? It's coming up at 4 o'clock. So let's take a look at the latest on the hurricane and what the latest advisory says. 80 miles an hour. Those winds are actually offshore. The center of the hurricane now is up kind of off of Cape May, New Jersey, and the 195 miles was south-southwest of New York as of 2 o'clock, and that flow around it like this is pushing up toward, obviously, the New York area. There was the pressure slowly coming up, indicating a slow weakening, but really not much, and we don't expect much all the way through the U.S. North-northeast at 17 is the wind. So flooding, rains, and coastal water rise, that's our threat. All right, back to Alan.
All right, thank you so much. This is Hurricane.
As the latest on the path and everything that Irene is doing. Dr. Nab?
Hey, good morning, Al and Steph. Here with Bryan Norcross, who's been here all night tracking the storm. It's amazing to me that the pressure has only risen so slowly over the last couple of days, and we're dealing with a Category 1 hurricane that only defines really the maximum sustained winds. Everything else about that category is not useful for describing the effects and the size of the storm.
And actually, the size of the storm has grown bigger as the center of the storm has gotten a little weaker. So in terms of the effects, it's actually spread out and more people are affected and will be affected.
Yeah, and interestingly, too, based on all the aircraft data, the maximum sustained winds at the surface are 75 miles an hour to make it a hurricane. But the aircraft data have been showing how the winds increase sharply with height, which has ramifications for as this interacts with the taller buildings and the higher terrain over New England. But maximum winds at the surface 75, that makes it a Category 1 hurricane at the low end. Pressure 958, it was 950 when it went over North Carolina yesterday, moving north-northeast at 18, and the center of circulation going right up the Jersey Shore pretty much all night, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really been right on track. I thought it was wobbling to the right. It really looks right on track. Really looks right for New York City, and the strongest winds are on the right side. So what you said a moment ago is really important, because the strongest winds are aloft on the right side, so Boston will be on the right side. So high-rise buildings in Boston, I think, are really going to be subject to those right side winds.
I'll move along and take a look at the radar if we can get to that. There we go. So here's what is already been happening in the Northeast. The center of circulation still down to the south of here, and we kind of calculated by the numbers that maybe by 11 a.m. to noon today is when the center of circulation would go very near, if not right over, New York City.
Right, that's what it looks like, and where Stephanie and Al are, which is right in there, you see they're in between the bands right now. But this band that's a little farther out on Long Island is a ferocious band, and that's the one they had 2 tornado warnings for, and that's now moving up into the Hudson Valley and southeastern Connecticut, and they have got flood warnings, flash flood warnings, every kind of flood advisory warning that you can have for that area and extending down into New Jersey and Pennsylvania and point south too. I mean, the flooding is a serious thing underway right now.
Okay. More details from here. Let's go back to Al.
Good afternoon, meteorologist Craig Setzer in CBS 4 Weather Control. I know a lot of folks are busy. A lot is going on. There's a lot of anxiety we're feeling here in South Florida. And if you were with us 2 years ago for Irma in 2017, we got to a point where it felt like the tension level was so high. I literally said, and I need to say it again, everybody just take a breath, and let's just try to relax a little bit. I know the anxiety is really, really high, and it's amazing. You go out and everybody is talking about the storm. Everybody is discussing the models, and we'll discuss the models too. But this is not coming here tonight or tomorrow, so we have some time. So everybody, we're just relax a little bit. And honestly, I'm kind of saying it for myself too. So let's show you the latest. Here's the 2 o'clock intermediate advisory. The intermediate advisory that's now every 3 hours at 2 p.m. and then the next intermediate advisory will be at 8 p.m. This is just an update on the position and the location. And a couple of things I want to point out here. First is the latitude there. The latitude is that 24.8 number, and 24.8 is this number right up here. So that's the number that it goes up, means that it's getting farther and farther north, and we want that number to keep going up and keep going up at a good clip. We want it above 26. In fact, if it's above 27, that'll be much, much farther north with our latitude, and that will be a good thing. So that number we're watching. Also new but not significant with this advisory is the wind speed there, 115 miles an hour. That makes it Category 3. That was in the forecast, so no surprises there. We expected that. The storm is now 445 miles or so east of the northwest Bahamas. Now, here's the future track, and the future track continues this slow curve here. We're already in part of the turn here, but now it continues it to the west and west-northwest. And this is our Saturday evening time frame. So all of these points are slowing down just a little bit as far as how close and how quickly it gets to Florida. Here's our Sunday morning position. Here's our Monday morning position there. This is the northwest Bahamas, so through the northwest Bahamas. And then this is our Tuesday morning position. And as I mentioned earlier, that 3 is because that forecast points over land. It's not a weakening of the storm approaching us. It's a weakening after it gets over land. And then look what happens, and we've talked about this also. There's a sudden point change up to the north there, still winding down. So this turn here is showing up in all the models, but the big question mark is, does this turn occur after it gets to South Florida and then goes north? Does this turn as it reaches South Florida and then goes north? Or does this turn occur out here and then it goes north? Because many of the models are indicating that turn is going to be rather abrupt. Now, obviously, a faster storm gets to Florida sooner, and then it turns, or a slower storm may not get to Florida before it turns, and those are two of the considerations that we're watching. Now, because new model data is coming in, I'd like to show it to you because I'm not going to hide anything. People text me and call me, and they're like, what do you know? What's the real story? I'd say tune in at 3 and I'll show you the real story. I'm telling you everything. I'm telling my friends, my family, people here at the station what's going on. There's no hiding what's going on. Here's the models for 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Here we go through time. There's the European model and there's the GFS model. This is 3 p.m. Monday afternoon. So you can see they're in better agreement, much better than they've been now. That's good. We like that because it increases confidence. But the main thing to note, and I'm actually going to draw this for you, is that the European model no longer has that southwest turn. This run, and in fact the last one, kind of showed more of a west or a west-northwest motion. We like that because that southwest turn, that was a scary thing to think that it could be getting higher and then come back to the south and then come up at us. This is one run now. We want to see 3 more of these type of runs before we start feeling better here. And the difference between where it is here and where it is there is about 100 miles, and that is too close to call. So the new model's now going ahead in time. This is 3 p.m. on Monday, going into 4 a.m. on Tuesday. The European model still has it right about there. It's basically stalled just to our east. The GFS model is a little bit more to the north now on Tuesday morning. And now watch what happens. Both models begin a northward pull. So the big question is are you going to buy this model? And if you do, you're taking a big risk because we've only seen one run of this model that's a little bit offshore. Or are you going to continue to prepare? I am putting up my shutters tomorrow because I'm not betting my house that this model is going to be better than this model here. And so don't buy into one model. Don't say, oh, it's going to miss us, because we just don't know that yet. And it takes me a while to put up my shutters, and it takes me a while to top off my supplies and things like that. There may come a point in time as we go through the weekend where we say we can pause our preparations, but now is not the time for that. This is too close to call at this point. And the thing is, if you're talking about a compact Category 4, you've either got windy conditions with rain, or you've got a hurricane, and a bad hurricane, and it's just too close to call at this point. So my message to everybody here at the station, my message to all my friends, my message to all of you is we continue to prepare until we see a more confident resolution that this is not coming here to South Florida. I talked to a friend this morning, and he said, I don't think it's going to hit, but I got gas, I got water, and I took care of my home. And I said, you did the right thing. It's great that you think it's not going to come here, but you're prepared that it will come here. And that's the way we all need to think. So we'll keep you up to date. We'll give you the latest news conferences and the latest information. This is the newest run on the European model here. I'll bring it all to you and break in as necessary. But of course, we want you to be safe. We want us to be safe. We all live here in South Florida. We're all dealing with this together, okay?
Thank you. We're also live this afternoon on Fox Weather. I was just telling folks on Facebook and on YouTube that we're doing a three-way stream today, something new, because this will allow folks watching on Fox Weather, if you have questions about what we're going to talk about here on this new advisory, if you go over to the Fox Weather Facebook page or the Fox Weather YouTube channel, you can go ahead and put in your questions. People are gathering here. We have several hundred already that have come in. And let me get started. And we're going to continue on both Facebook and on YouTube here. And then we'll kind of go back and forth a little bit on Fox Weather to give everybody a chance to get their questions in. All right, because we have a new information from the Hurricane Center as of 5 o'clock here, and you see up to 100-mile-an-hour winds moving north-northwest at 13. So you can see that the track is kind of right on track. It's made a little bit of an arc to the right, which unfortunately is bad for Florida. If you remember our discussion yesterday, when it was all weaving around down here, we didn't know if it was going to come out this way. If it went out that way, we thought it might stay farther offshore of Florida. And then, who knew what was going to happen farther north when it looked like perhaps the Panhandle was threatened. Not that the Panhandle isn't still threatened, at least part of it. But now it clearly is taking this this track more like the more threatening computer models indicated over this western end of Cuba, where, yes, there are some, I don't know if you call them mountains, but there's certainly some high elevation there, which will be more like a speed bump because this is a large circulation. You can see the size of it, and it's very well developed, so not expected to be a big factor. When we're looking at this, the other thing I want you to notice, there are these bands out here. These bands out here are these outer feeder bands that can have very strong winds in them, and some of them, you can kind of make out the thunderstorms in there. Some of them can have tornadoes in them when they get up near land. So these are the bands that are going to be over the peninsula while the storm is still offshore. So we're going to remember that because that's going to indicate the possibility of very heavy rain, some tornadoes in some of these bands, but the tornadoes are usually very fast moving, especially farther south. Once it gets inland, if it goes inland into Georgia and whatnot, then we could be talking about a different kind of tornado. But generally in Florida, they're fast moving and more like very strong gusts in the storm. When we look close up here, we can see the center of the storm is blowing up as we expect to see in a developing hurricane. All right, so here's the new track from the Hurricane Center. The idea is that by tomorrow afternoon, we have a 130-mile-an-hour Category 4 hurricane just north of Cuba, just southwest of Key West. At this time, the thinking is that we could have tropical storm force winds, maybe 40 to 60 miles per hour over the Keys and approaching southwest Florida, assuming that the track is right. Now, let's look at the track as we go farther north. It's a similar track, but it's a little bit closer to Florida, unfortunately. The computer models that came in this afternoon are in outstanding agreement. Unfortunately, the outstanding agreement is for them to be in the vicinity of Tampa Bay, moving very, very slowly. Now, because we know there's uncertainty, we've already seen this thing moving all over the place, although when the cone was moving all over the place, the computer models were going all over the place, the main computer models, the GFS and the European and a couple of the others. Now they are kind of confining themselves to the cone. So it's a different kind of a situation. But if the storm goes to this side of the cone, it's obviously different for a lot of folks than if it goes to this side of the cone. So there still is, we still don't know exactly how it's going to play out as it gets up farther north. But the point is that anywhere in this cone is threatening to significant parts of Florida, anywhere. So we don't want anybody to think, oh, I'm looking at that and somehow that's good for me, unless you're over in the Panhandle there, then the obviously your odds are far less of being affected. But anybody from Panama City Beach over, especially from, let's say, just north of Fort Myers over to Melbourne or so and north is more threatening. But South Florida, still very heavy rain, very gusty winds, and that could be an issue. So on Fox Weather, I'm going to send you back to the studio, and I'll continue with discussion here on Facebook and YouTube. We'll see you back here, Fox Weather viewers, in just a few minutes.
I'm Amy Freeze. Welcome to Fox Weather's YouTube page. We have more great videos on the way, so make sure to subscribe to stay updated on all things weather.